Good evening. Sir Peter Morrison was the very essence of respectability, the son of a baron, Eton-educated, and a parliamentary private secretary to the former Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. Tonight, though, a survivor of the North Wales child abuse scandal talks for the first time on camera about witnessing the politician taking vulnerable boys away in his car. His revelations shed new light on the extent of the abuse and allegations that it was carried out by people in the highest offices of the land. Also tonight, as one of the abuse victims meets the Welsh Secretary, the government announces details of 2 new inquiries into what went on in North Wales. Will they expose a second Tory grandee who it's alleged abused and then threatened his victims?
When he threatened me, he told me who he was for a start, and number 2, that he would have me killed if I spoke out.
And will justice finally be done more than a decade after an official inquiry into the scandal, an inquiry branded a cover-up?
I was told certain names had to be taken off. I wasn't allowed to come out with them. There'd be no questions asked about them.
Here in America, a brilliant day for voting and a vast turnout in the autumn sun. Queues in all the key swing states. Obama hugs his supporters in gratitude for a formidable effort in getting out the vote. Romney refuses to stop, preferring to continue campaigning right up until the polls close. And amid global shifts of power ahead of China's own leadership upheavals, from Shenzhen tonight, our international editor Lindsay Hilsum gives us China's take on the US elections.
One of the things that baffles the communist leadership here is the American enthusiasm for change. They can't think of anything worse than not knowing from one day to the next who your leader's going to be.
So new eyewitness allegations tonight over the North Wales child abuse scandal that go to the very heart of the establishment. One of the residents of the children's home at the centre of the allegations has spoken for the first time to this programme of seeing another boy driven away in a car belonging to the then Conservative MP, Sir Peter Morrison. Sir Peter, who died in 1995, was a close aide of the former Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher. And I must just warn you that this report from our correspondent, Kieran Jenkins, does contain explicit testimony from the eyewitness and another man who says he was the victim of abuse.
Sir Peter Morrison was at the heart of the Thatcher government. He was one of the Prime Minister's closest aides. But recently, he's been publicly linked to a child sex abuse scandal at the former Bryn Estyn care home in Wrexham. The evidence, though, has been patchy. Tonight, this man, who was at Bryn Estyn in the late 1970s, points the finger firmly in Morrison's direction. He's asked us to protect his identity. How often might you have seen him at the home?
5 times maybe.
And was he one of the ones that boys were known to get into a car with?
Yeah.
The importance of our inquiry is underlined.
12 years ago, a judge-led tribunal did look into what happened here, but it didn't address allegations that high-profile individuals had an involvement in the abuse. After one victim spoke out last week, James felt compelled to break his 35-year silence.
I knew that there were certain lads who were visited at night, shall we say, and were taken off in rather smart-looking cars.
What did they look like? Would you see the same face? Do you recognise them?
Yeah, quite a few different faces, but one face more often than not I recognise him because of his hair. It's always his hair stuck in my mind.
So who is that person?
Well, I know now he was the MP for Chester at the time. Morrison.
James's allegations go to the very core of the Thatcher government, and others may yet go further. Another senior Conservative who is still alive is also allegedly linked to this scandal.
We've done our best. We've told them the truth.
Keith Gregory was at Bryn Estyn in the 70s too. The outsiders abused boys, he said. This man says doctors, businessmen, police officers too are yet to be exposed.
We told the police, we told everybody, and it was just, they didn't want to know. They don't believe it. I mean, that was the culture then.
Keith was at Bryn Estyn in the early 70s. He was sexually assaulted by staff and says he was aware of outsiders abusing boys in the flat above their dormitory.
And they were taken off to this flat, given drinks, watching videos and being abused.
James says even now the memories make him feel sick.
We used to strip the beds, yeah, and some of the boys who had obviously been taken off the cars, some of their sheets were bloodstained.
And even now, as the government rushes to order fresh inquiries, these men are afraid they still won't be believed.
Nobody would believe you because these people were senior people. Nah, they wouldn't do that. But it's true, and you know, they did do that.
Do you think we'll ever get to the truth?
No. Too many people got too much to hide.
Kieran Jenkins, Channel 4 News, Wrexham.
Well, the man whose allegations of sexual abuse last week resurrected the care home scandal has told this programme he handed the police photographs of some of the boys being abused in the late 1970s. Steve Messham says that one of the pictures features a second Conservative Party grandee who he says abused him. The man, who can't be named for legal reasons, denies the allegations. But very few of the abusers pictured were prosecuted. And Mr Messham says he's been told the police don't know where the photographs are. Here's Porrick O'Brien.
It's hard to imagine a more tragic misnomer, calling Bryn Estyn a care home. The people who ran this home did more than sexually abuse the boys. They farmed them out to paedophiles. They were called trips away, and you were sent out even if, like Steve Messham, you didn't want a pass.
They used to just say, no, you're on a pass tonight. And as soon as they said that, you knew what was going to happen, and there'd be a car waiting for you. Sunday night was the worst night of all.
Do you remember the cars that used to turn up for you on Sunday nights?
Yeah, some of them, some you don't forget. I've been driven in Porsches. One red sports car, which I don't know the make of. A Bentley. A Daimler. And if it was going to be a night where it was just as standard abusers, an Adventure.
So Steve, you're telling me that Daimler would pull up at the care home. You'd get in. A chauffeur-driven car, presumably?
We had a driver.
And you'd be brought where?
It's wherever it was going to happen that time. Mainly happened to me in the Crest Hotel.
Did they come across as aristocratic?
They come across as very wealthy, very well-to-do, very smart. It stank of aftershave.
The other popular place for abuse was a council flat in Wrexham. Here the abusers would document the horror with a Polaroid camera.
You were raped, you were abused, you were beaten, you were given alcohol. Various pictures would be taken.
Did they take your picture?
Lots of them.
In 1979, Steve decided to try to get his own back. At 16, he broke into the flat and stole the photos.
How many photographs?
5 or 6 dozen at least.
So you took these photographs to the police station?
Yeah.
You handed them over to a police officer?
Yeah. I was asked, there was a desk, and I went in and I asked, I said, show them these pictures, and they called for a detective. He then got on the phone or called for someone, I can't remember exactly what happened, and a more senior officer came and took the photographs off me.
And what happened to those photographs?
Well, only 2 people ever got prosecuted and 1 got a warning.
We spoke to North Wales Police today about these photographs. They told us that now that the inquiry has been set up, they were not in a position to comment.
So to be clear, in those photographs, there were lots of other men.
Yes.
Photographs of them raping boys.
Yeah.
And what happened to those other men?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. I remember when questioned on it, the police saying, well, you couldn't really identify some of the men. I'm sorry, I saw those pictures. You know, they weren't just of me, there was other boys on them as well. I saw them, so I know.
And you saw other men's faces?
Yeah.
Clearly?
Very clearly.
Whose face?
The prominent Tory member, for one.
his face, you could clearly see his face in one of those photographs that you handed into the police?
Yes, more than one of those photographs.
Photographs of him raping a boy?
Yes, including me.
How did you know who he was?
By the threats I got. When he threatened me, he told me who he was for a start, and number two, that he would have me killed if I spoke out. But that was their standard way of doing stuff. Most abusers are like that.
Years later, he had another chance to tell the authorities his story at the Waterhouse inquiry into the North Wales care home scandal in the late 90s. According to Steve Messham, there he was aggressively cross-examined and, because of the parameters of the inquiry, told to remove names from his testimony.
About 6 to 8 weeks before I was due to give evidence, I was taken in a back room where I was told certain names had to be taken off. I wasn't allowed to come out with them. There'd be no questions asked about them.
So there was 30 to 32 names that you wanted on that statement. Is that right?
No, there's 30 to 32 names they took off the statement. There was over 60 names on my statement.
And why did they tell you you couldn't name the rest?
They just said to me, exact words were, we cannot have these people at this inquiry. You'll have to take them off your statements.
But there must have been a reason.
They didn't give me a reason. They just said they couldn't do it.
Well, the government gave more details today of 2 new inquiries into the scandal. The head of the new National Crime Agency, Keith Bristow, will review the original police investigation, while a High Court judge, Justice Julia Wendy McKerr, will examine the conduct of the subsequent Waterhouse inquiry. The investigations being reviewed began back in 1991, when North Wales Police first looked into allegations of abuse from the 70s and 80s. 7 care workers were convicted, but there was concern the scale of abuse had gone much further. A lengthy report on the abuse produced for Clwyd Council was pulped because of fears of liability. In 1996, the then Welsh Secretary, William Hague, asked Sir Ronald Waterhouse to inquire into the abuse of children in care in Gwynedd and Clwyd since 1974. Well, it sat for 203 days and took evidence from 575 witnesses. But when it was published in 2000, the names of 28 alleged abusers were removed from the final report. 140 compensation claims by victims were settled, but even then critics called the inquiry a cover-up. Crucially, abuse which didn't take place on care home premises, such as that alleged by Steve Messham in that report there, was not included in the inquiry. Well, our political correspondent Michael Crick is in Westminster now. So what do you make of what the government's announced today?
Well, it's clear, I think, that ministers have learnt the lessons of how the BBC handled the Savile affair and they're keen ministers to show that they're acting quickly and decisively and taking these allegations seriously. Hence the meeting this afternoon between Steve Messham, one of the victims that we heard from just now, and the Welsh Secretary David Jones at the Welsh office. Now, Mr Jones himself, who's only just become Welsh Secretary, may well know a lot of the background to this case because he's from Clwyd, he's a Clwyd MP, he was a member of the Welsh Assembly, got links to Wrexham and was for many years a solicitor in the area. Earlier, Theresa May came to the House to announce to give details of the 2 inquiries. In the first case, she announced she was responding to Mr Mesham's complaint on Newsnight that the Waterhouse inquiry in the late 90s was too narrowly focused and that police had failed to follow up allegations made to that inquiry.
The government is treating these allegations with the utmost seriousness. Child abuse is a hateful, abhorrent and disgusting crime, and we must not allow these allegations to go unanswered. And I therefore urge anybody who has information relating to these allegations to go to the police.
Now, Labour argued that what was needed as well was some form of overarching inquiry to bring all the inquiries that are now going on together, because, of course, there are several inquiries into the Savile allegations as well. And the Shadow Cabinet member, Tom Watson, got up. He has himself been bombarded in recent days by allegations of child sex abuse from all over the country. And he said, look, the 2 inquiries announced today are far too narrowly focused on North Wales. and that the injustices will continue so long as there isn't a much wider inquiry. He put it in very strong terms.
But what actually matters is the thousands and thousands of children whose lives have been ground into nothing, who prefer to kill themselves than carry on, who have nowhere to turn, to whom nobody listens, whom nobody helps. Mr. Speaker, does the Right Honourable Lady sincerely want to start making amends, or can she live with being what she's just announced, the next stage of a cover-up?
Well, briefly, Michael, what about these allegations we've been reporting on tonight about Sir Peter Morrison, the former Prime Ministerial aide? Pretty hard for the Tories to handle that, isn't it?
Yes, they chime with what Rod Richards, the former Welsh Office Minister, said a few days ago, that he saw Peter Morrison's name mentioned in documentation at the time they set up the Waterhouse inquiry. And Rod Richards told me tonight that he's content in his own mind that Morrison was a paedophile. The Guardian journalist Nick Davis alleged some years ago that Morrison was picked up by police for sex offences in public lavatories and let off. So these allegations do go back many, many years.
Michael in Westminster, thank you. And later in the programme, we'll be talking to the man who was Welsh Secretary at the time of the official Waterhouse inquiry and an MP who served on the investigation by the local authority into the abuse. But for now...